Picture a sprawling mansion perched on a hillside, glittering lights illuminating the driveway where expensive cars roll up one after another. Gowns shimmer, champagne flows, and guests murmur in hushed excitement. They're all gathered to celebrate a charming millionaire who has everything, except peace. Outside those gilded gates stands a pregnant woman, tears streaking her cheeks. She's banned from entering, labeled an unwelcome outsider at her own husband's birthday party. The gatekeeper, his flamboyant mistress who's orchestrated the event of the year. Tempers flare, alliances shift, and buried secrets threaten to explode. Tonight, love, betrayal, and raw ambition collide. No one will leave unscathed. Eleanor Redwood pressed a trembling hand against the tight swell of her belly. Her heart pounded as she stood outside the ornate wrought-iron gates of the Redwood estate. Surrounded by meticulously landscaped gardens and an immaculately trimmed hedge maze, the mansion glowed under the setting sun, a testament to wealth, power, and status. Inside, an extravagant birthday celebration for her husband, Alexander Redwood, was already in full swing. She should have been the one planning this party. She was his wife, after all. But instead, the event had been commandeered by Dahlia West, the alleged mistress who had brazenly plastered her name across the gilded invitations. Eleanor felt a swirl of emotions: outrage, sadness, confusion. But most of all, she felt fear. Fear for her unborn child, and fear of what this night might mean for the life she'd painstakingly built with Alexander. Armed guards wearing identical stoic expressions stood stationed at the entrance. They scrutinized Eleanor's face and refused to let her pass. Her pleas fell on deaf ears. As the guests' laughter drifted down the driveway, she could only clutch her round stomach and think, how did it come to this? To understand that answer, we must journey back in time, back to the start of a story fraught with ambition, desire, and deception. Alexander Redwood's life was far from ordinary. Hailing from a line of old money aristocrats, he inherited Redwood Holdings from his father at the age of 25. Under his leadership, Redwood Holdings diversified into glamorous pursuits, luxury resorts in Bali, tech startups in Silicon Valley, and philanthropic ventures that earned him headlines. His keen eye for opportunity meant everything he touched seemed to turn to gold. But Alexander's relentless drive often overshadowed life's subtler pleasures. It wasn't until he met Eleanor Carmichael, an unassuming librarian from Philadelphia, that he discovered a calm, restorative love. She was the polar opposite of the high society women he'd been expected to marry. Eleanor's humility and intelligence entranced him. They married in a small ceremony with just close friends and family, defying the Redwood legacy of ostentatious affairs. Despite the Redwood board's reservations, fearing a nobody wife would weaken the Redwood brand, Eleanor won them over with her grace and warmth. For a while, the Redwood mansion was filled with genuine laughter. Their families merged into a newly formed circle of acceptance. Alexander's mother, the formidable Lucille Redwood, even took a guarded liking to her sweet daughter-in-law. But as the Redwood empire expanded, Alexander's time for family shrank. Within 2 years of the marriage, Redwood Holdings soared to new heights. News outlets like the New York Times and Forbes carried front-page stories about his latest acquisitions. It was around this time that Dahlia West entered the picture, hired to head the marketing division for Redwood Resorts. Dahlia was everything Eleanor wasn't. Vivacious, seductive, unapologetically ambitious. She'd spent her 20s hopping between powerful men's arms to gain influence in major corporations. Now in her mid-30s, Dahlia was polished and ready for bigger conquests. She set her sights on Redwood Holdings. The tabloids whispered that Dahlia skillfully employed her charms to climb the ranks, eventually nabbing a top executive position that put her in daily contact with Alexander himself. Reports trickled through Redwood's internal gossip chain: late-night strategy meetings, champagne toasts for marketing triumphs, business trips to exotic locales with only 2 tickets booked. Whenever Eleanor mentioned Dahlia's name, Alexander would dismiss her concerns with an incredulous laugh. "Don't be silly, darling. She's just a valuable team member." Still, the seeds of doubt had been planted in Eleanor's mind. When she discovered she was pregnant, she hoped the new life growing inside her might rekindle the spark in her marriage. Instead, it seemed to intensify Dahlia's hold on Alexander. The day Eleanor found the incriminating text messages, amorous banter, innuendo-laden jokes, and hotel reservations under Dahlia's name, her world tilted. She did not confront him at once, terrified of the heartbreak that confrontation would unleash. Instead, she quietly monitored the dynamic and prayed she was wrong. Dahlia West was no stranger to scandal. Raised by a single mother who spent her best years working in a second-rate diner, Dahlia learned early on that power opened doors and closed them for others. She believed the wealthy played by different rules, and if she wanted a seat at their table, she needed to become indispensable. When she joined Redwood Holdings, she tackled the marketing for their Bali resorts with unmatched zeal. Her campaigns garnered attention from Travel Plus Leisure and Condé Nast Traveler, doubling Redwood Resort's social media presence within months. Alexander was thrilled. Her results were quantifiable proof that Redwood Holdings had recruited a star. Her interest in Alexander Redwood was more than just professional. She found his self-confidence and drive intoxicating. With time, her flirtations grew bolder, ignoring boundaries that any moral code might have established. She discovered Alexander's frustrations, his weariness from boardroom battles, his sense of alienation in a marriage that had lost its spontaneity. Dahlia exploited every weakness with calculated precision. She catered to Alexander's restless spirit, surprise restaurant reservations at exclusive venues, helicopter rides over city skylines, and adventurous weekend getaways in private villas. She made him feel alive. People like Jack Friedman, Redwood's PR guru, started noticing the deepening connection, but Redwood Holdings thrived on hush-hush secrets. Paychecks were large, loyalties were thin, and gossip was currency. Still, no one dared challenge the boss about his increasingly public closeness to Dahlia West. A major turning point came one night at Cipriani's in New York, where Alexander, Dahlia, and a few VIP clients celebrated a multi-million-dollar deal. Eleanor had remained home exhausted from the pregnancy's morning sickness. After a rowdy dinner, Dahlia leaned in over champagne and murmured something into Alexander's ear. The tension between them was electric. Onlookers, including the local paparazzi from Page 6, captured discreet photos of their near kiss. The next day, Redwood's social media feeds lit up with speculation. Dahlia's star soared higher. Instead of shrinking from the limelight, she basked in it, fueling rumors and stoking Alexander's ego. Once she ascertained how easy it was to isolate Eleanor, who rarely appeared at Redwood corporate events due to her pregnancy, she reveled in every opportunity to push the wife further into the shadows. And that's when she hatched her boldest scheme, an over-the-top birthday bash that would showcase her power and position in Alexander's life. She wanted to break Eleanor Redwood publicly, ensuring there was no question about who truly held Alexander's heart and bank account. Eleanor watched the unfolding drama with mounting dread. Magazines like Vanity Fair and the Daily Mirror speculated openly about Alexander Redwood's love triangle. She dreaded visiting the grocery store, where tabloids screamed sensational headlines at the checkout counters. Millionaire's wife on the outs, or secret mistress takes over Redwood Mansion. Her close friend Ava Carter tried to rally her spirits. Over coffee one morning, Ava held Eleanor's hand. "You have to stand your ground," she urged. "You're pregnant with his child. Alexander needs to remember that family comes first." Eleanor nodded, tears trembling at the edges of her eyes. "But how do I reach him when Dahlia's around him all the time? It's like she's replaced me in every aspect of his life." Ava squeezed her hand. "We'll find a way. I promise." Despite the scandal swirling around them, Alexander hadn't explicitly acknowledged his affair. He tiptoed around the subject, offering half-hearted apologies for late nights at the office, while ignoring the swirling rumors. Eleanor felt trapped between wanting to keep her marriage intact and refusing to be humiliated any longer. Then came the party invite. A group email sent on Redwood Holdings letterhead but signed with a flourish by Dahlia West. You are cordially invited to celebrate the birthday of our esteemed Mr. Alexander Redwood. Join us for an evening of lavish entertainment at the Redwood estate. There was no mention of Eleanor Redwood as hostess, and that small detail ignited a fury in Eleanor's soul she didn't know she possessed. After all, how dare Dahlia West plan a celebration in her home? Well, the Redwood family home, and exclude her name. Yet a second blow came that evening in the form of a formal letter from Redwood Holdings. Inside was a clause referencing property management listing Dahlia West as the official organizer of the event. The letter ended with a chilling directive. Security clearance will be issued exclusively upon Mistress West's guest list. Kindly ensure all official Redwood staff direct inquiries to Ms. West's team for approvals. Eleanor nearly tore the paper to shreds. She scanned it repeatedly, failing to understand how Redwood's board, let alone Alexander, could condone this. But Redwood Holdings was not a typical family business anymore. Sprawling divisions, countless stakeholders, and power plays behind the scenes often meant the lines between personal and professional were blurred. Already reeling from a swirl of pregnancy hormones, she resolved to do something. She would confront Alexander. But her attempts to discuss the matter were stonewalled. He was always in a meeting, away on business, or unavailable. The final straw came when she attempted to contact the Redwood Estate's housekeeping manager to plan a separate family event for Alexander, a private dinner with just close relatives. The manager stammered that Ms. West had already given strict orders the kitchen would be occupied with Dahlia's catering team for the next week, leaving no room for unplanned events. Eleanor understood the message loud and clear. Her presence was not wanted at her own husband's birthday celebration. Dahlia wanted to erase her from the picture. As the news spread, sympathetic voices reached out to Eleanor. An unlikely supporter came in the form of Robert Douglas, Redwood Holdings' head attorney. Having seen the Redwood Empire's ethical lapses more times than he cared to admit, Robert reached out privately to Eleanor via a phone call, hushed and cautious. Mrs. Redwood, Robert began. I'm sorry to intrude. I know things have been difficult, but I can't in good conscience stand by and watch what is happening to you. There are documents in play you should be aware of. Eleanor's pulse quickened. Documents. Dahlia West has been slyly maneuvering Redwood assets, or at least trying to. She's recommended changes to the Redwood Estate's property deeds. She's also flagged certain Redwood trust funds for reallocation. I'm not sure I understand. Robert sighed. It's complicated, but she's trying to shift some of the Redwood finances, possibly to gain a vantage point in case she tries to push a divorce scenario or a prenuptial rewrite. I don't have proof yet, but the signs are there. I just wanted you to know. If something happens, you have me on your side. Tremors of both panic and relief rippled through Eleanor. She thanked Robert for his honesty, her voice shaking. At least someone within Redwood's corporate fortress cared about her well-being. In the days leading up to the birthday party, Ava Carter helped rally a small group of friends to support Eleanor. They included Isabel Harrington, an old university friend turned lifestyle blogger, who offered to expose Dahlia's manipulative tactics if needed. Also stepping forward was Jameson Caldwell, a philanthropic partner of Redwood's, who detested Dahlia's arrogance. He told Eleanor that Alexander wasn't acting like himself these days, describing him as fatigued and easily swayed. The group converged at a quiet cafe in downtown Philadelphia. Over lattes and pastries, they strategized how to get Eleanor into that party, even if Dahlia had done everything to bar her entry. It's crucial, said Ava, that you show a strong front. She can't just ban the wife from the husband's birthday celebration in your own home. It's outrageous. Jameson nodded. Alexander needs a wake-up call. He's been seduced by Dahlia's performance, but I believe deep down he still values you, Eleanor. If you appear at the party, it forces him to confront the consequences of his actions. Eleanor mulled it over, her hands trembling. But the security. Dahlia has them under her thumb. I'm not sure how I'll even get past the gate. Ava exchanged glances with Isabel. We'll figure it out, Ava said, leaning in. We'll get you inside. And so a plan was set in motion. They would ensure that on the night of the party, Eleanor Redwood, pregnant, determined, and unyielding, would not be left out in the cold. The Redwood estate was decked out in lavish splendor on the evening of Alexander Redwood's 42nd birthday. Towering ice sculptures adorned the main courtyard, each carved to depict Redwood's various business ventures: a miniature Redwood resort, perched on a wave, a Redwood Tech microchip, a Redwood Charities dove. Fireworks technicians scurried about preparing a display that would illuminate the skies at midnight, and staff wearing crisp uniforms bearing Dahlia West's insignia moved with military-like efficiency. Inside the grand foyer, guests mingled beneath colossal chandeliers sipping vintage champagne from crystal flutes. Sleek, black-suited security guards hired from an elite private firm discreetly patrolled the perimeter. The Redwood estate's staff had been temporarily replaced by Dahlia's hand-picked team, ensuring every detail reflected her preference: modern extravagance with a hint of scandalous flair. Eleanor stood outside the tall gates, the same spot where she'd found herself in the prologue, gathering her courage. Ava, Isabel, and Jameson hovered nearby, offering moral support and final words of encouragement. "You can do this," Ava whispered, looping her arm through Eleanor's. "We're right behind you." Sure enough, two imposing guards glared at Eleanor as she approached. They had a crisp guest list on digital tablets. Her name was obviously not on it. One guard, a stocky man with a shaved head, barked, "Name Eleanor Redwood," she said, voice trembling but resolute. His eyes flicked across the screen. Then he frowned. "I'm sorry, ma'am. You're not on the list." She tried to keep her composure. "I'm his wife. This is my home." The guard remained impassive. Ms. West's instructions were explicit. "No one is admitted without an invitation. If you do not have a scannable invitation, we cannot let you in." Jameson stepped forward, brandishing a sleek black invitation with Dahlia's swirling signature. "I'm on the list," he stated, "and so is my +1. The guard quickly located Jameson's name, nodded, and said, "Your +1 is Ms. Harrington." Isabel Harrington flashed a second invitation. Ava cleared her throat, drawing attention to the fact that there were more people wanting entrance than two. "What about me?" The guard scanned the list again, eyebrows raised. "Ava Carter. Yes, you and a +1 are admitted." Ava beamed. "Perfect. My +1 is Mrs. Redwood." The guard hesitated, looking from the tablet to the red ropes. Dahlia West had not anticipated that the +1s would be used to smuggle in the wife. The man looked uncertain, but the lines outside were growing as more fancy cars arrived with partygoers. After a moment of silence heavy enough to snap, the guard sighed. "Go on in," he said, the reluctance in his voice evident. "Just try not to cause any trouble." Eleanor exhaled shakily. This victory, however small, felt monumental. She clutched Ava's hand. "I'm in." They strode up the long driveway flanked by manicured hedges and classical statues. The distant thrum of music and conversation grew louder with each step. Around them, couples in designer attire strolled, laughing blissfully, unaware of the drama unfolding behind the scenes. As they reached the entrance, staff members recognized Eleanor but quickly diverted their gazes, fearful of the consequences of acknowledging her. The tension in the air was palpable. Dahlia West, wearing a form-fitting midnight blue gown that shimmered with crystals, was mingling near the rose marble staircase. Her eyes locked onto Eleanor the moment she crossed the threshold. A hush fell over the foyer. Conversations paused as guests realized who had just arrived. Cameras flashed, some from official photographers, others from excited attendees capturing an unexpected showdown. Eleanor lifted her chin. She was shaking inside, but outwardly she projected her best impersonation of Redwood confidence. She was, after all, the mistress of this house. Dahlia's cat-like smile froze. She excused herself from a cluster of corporate bigwigs and glided across the marble floor until she stood inches away from Eleanor. "How quaint of you to join us," Dahlia drawled, her voice carrying a hint of triumph. "But I believe your invitation got lost in the mail." Eleanor met her gaze unwaveringly. I don't need an invitation to attend my husband's birthday party. A beat of tense silence. Then Dahlia's lips curled ever so slightly. Ah, but let's see if your husband even wants you here. Alexander Redwood made his grand entrance into the foyer as the DJ announced his name. He descended the marble staircase in a tailored suit, all smiles until he spotted the two women he knew he'd have to keep apart at all costs. The grin on his face froze. Flashes of camera lights burst around him, capturing the shock that flickered across his features. Dahlia swiftly slipped to his side, looping her arm through his. "Darling," she cooed loud enough for the assembled crowd to hear, "your wife has decided to grace us with her presence." Alexander cleared his throat, glancing nervously at Eleanor. You came," he stammered. Eleanor nodded. "Did you expect me not to come to your birthday celebration?" Dahlia's nails dug into Alexander's arm, and he winced. "Alexander," she said more quietly, "let's speak privately." He nodded quickly, murmuring a hurried apology to the nearby guests. Eleanor stood, heart racing, as the pair retreated behind a set of ornate French doors leading into the private library. Ava and Isabel bristled at how Dahlia took charge, but Eleanor signaled them to wait. This was a confrontation she needed to have alone with her husband. Inside the library, the door clicked shut. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined the walls, and a blazing fireplace illuminated the tension between the three. Dahlia released Alexander's arm, her lips pursed. "What is the meaning of this?" Dahlia asked, voice sharp. "We agreed." Alexander, trying to keep the peace, spoke over her. "Eleanor, please understand. This event, it's complicated." Eleanor's fury finally boiled over. "Complicated? You're celebrating your birthday with your mistress in our home, and somehow it's complicated, Alexander. I'm pregnant. Our child is due in less than 3 months. Yet you let this woman bar me from your party from my house?" Dahlia snorted. "This is Redwood business, dear. I've spared no expense to make this a monumental corporate event. Inviting you didn't seem enough." Eleanor's voice cracked through the room. She looked at her husband with pleading eyes. "Do you hear her? Is this how you treat me, your wife?" Alexander pinched the bridge of his nose. "I never told Dahlia to ban you," he said softly, "but I didn't stop her either. I'm sorry." Dahlia's eyes blazed with indignation. "Sorry? You told me you needed your space from her." Eleanor's chest tightened. She turned on Dahlia. "You had no right to plan this celebration and exclude me. You're not his wife, no matter what you tell yourself." Dahlia opened her mouth to retort, but Alexander stepped between them. "Both of you stop. This is my birthday. Can we not do this here?" Eleanor felt tears prick the corners of her eyes. "I deserve an explanation. The world is watching. Everyone sees these photographs of you two together. It's humiliating. And now Robert Douglas tells me there might be changes to our estate. Are you planning on divorcing me? Taking everything away from me and our unborn child?" Alexander's face paled. "Divorce? Who said anything about that?" Dahlia's silence spoke volumes. Her expression flickered with guilt, or perhaps it was triumph. She shrugged. "You told me you were unhappy, Alexander. I'm simply protecting our best interests." "And what about my best interests?" Eleanor demanded, voice trembling. "I gave up my quiet life to be with you. I've supported you despite all your late nights and endless work, and now you're letting this woman rewrite our future." For a moment Alexander appeared torn. He raked a hand through his hair. The weight of his own duplicity pressed upon him. Then Dahlia, in a whispery tone, tried to slip an arm around him again. "Alex, darling, you don't have to do this." He pulled away, looking utterly conflicted. "Dahlia, just give us a moment." She gaped, clearly unused to being dismissed. But the tension in the room was so thick she eventually stormed out, leaving the library doors ajar where curious guests craned to get a glimpse of the fireworks that were not part of Dahlia's planned spectacle. Once alone, Alexander turned to Eleanor. I'm sorry, he repeated, running a hand over his face. I never wanted it to go this far. She stared at him, tears glistening in her eyes. Then why did you allow it? Why let her throw this monstrous party? Why let her degrade me in front of everyone? He sank into a leather armchair, shoulders slumped. I got caught up. Dahlia was exciting. She breathed life into Redwood Holdings marketing. I couldn't see that she was overshadowing you, overshadowing our marriage. And as for the party, it spiraled into something I couldn't control. Eleanor let out a shuddering breath. I love you, Alex. I believe we can fix this, but only if we act like a married couple. If you want to be with her, tell me. Don't leave me in limbo humiliated. His eyes reflected the flicker of guilt. I don't want to lose you, or our baby. He paused. But Dahlia, she's powerful. She's entrenched in Redwood Holdings. There's so much money and so many deals she's orchestrating. She threatened, she said she'd expose Redwood's finances, cause a scandal if I tried to break away. Eleanor sniffed. So you're letting her blackmail you into being with her? He nodded weakly. I was trying to appease her. Keep Redwood stable until after the baby was born. I didn't realize she'd do something like this. Eleanor approached him, placed a hand on his shoulder. Alex, Redwood Holdings is just a company. If you lose your integrity, you lose yourself. And then there's no point in having an empire at all. A hush lingered. Finally, he stood and straightened his suit. You're right. It's time to end this. But please let me handle Dahlia carefully. She's cunning, and I fear what she'll do if cornered. Eleanor nodded hesitantly. No more secrets, Alex. I can't handle this stress. It's bad for me, for the baby. He pulled her into an embrace, softly kissing her temple. I promise. Let's get through this party without further drama, and then we'll deal with Dahlia, together. Despite Alexander's assurances, the night was far from over. Word had spread quickly that the wife was in attendance, and the atmosphere crackled with curiosity and tension. Some guests, the Redwood Holdings cronies loyal to Dahlia, offered Eleanor thinly veiled disapproval. Others loyal to the Redwood family secretly applauded her courage in coming. In the grand ballroom, the stage was set for the official birthday toast. Dahlia stood front and center, microphone in hand. She had regained her composure, each polished word reflecting her ability to spin any situation to her advantage. Good evening, everyone. She began with a dazzling smile. I want to thank you all for joining us to celebrate our wonderful Alexander Redwood, an extraordinary leader, visionary, and personal inspiration to me. Personal inspiration indeed. Murmurs rippled through the audience. Eleanor, standing by Alexander's side near the edge of the dance floor, saw how Dahlia's gaze rested on him possessively. Dahlia rattled off Redwood Holdings' achievements from philanthropic milestones to the new Redwood resort set to open in Maui. Then she raised a champagne flute prepared to toast. Just then a ripple of movement near the back parted the crowd. Robert Douglas Redwood's head attorney stepped forward, flanked by a few Redwood board members who had arrived late. Apologies for the interruption, Robert said firmly. But I believe there's some paperwork that demands Alexander Redwood's immediate attention. Alexander frowned, stepping onto the stage. Dahlia, startled by the sudden development, tried to shield the microphone. Can't this wait? She hissed. We're in the middle of the toast. Robert politely but resolutely ignored Dahlia. Alexander, he said, lowering his voice. I have evidence that Dahlia West has been using her position to secure personal gains from Redwood accounts. The board needs to address this. A collective gasp echoed. Dahlia's face paled, yet she managed a controlled laugh. That's absurd. Where's your proof? Robert snapped his fingers and one of his assistants handed him a folder. Invoices, reallocated funds, property deeds with questionable signatures. We've been tracing these transactions for months. It's all here. The board requests an immediate hearing before Redwood Holdings becomes complicit in fraud. All eyes swung to Alexander. Dahlia forced a smile. This is your big night. Don't let these petty accusations derail your moment. We can handle it on Monday." But the Redwood board members were no longer Dahlia's puppets. Having grown wary of her manipulations, they urged Alexander to look. Press cameras began to flash madly, reporters craning for a sensational headline. Alexander opened the folder. His complexion darkened as he scanned line after incriminating line. "Dahlia, what did you do?" he whispered, heartbreak coloring his voice. Dahlia's eyes darted like a trapped animal's. "Alex, love, this is a misunderstanding. We can talk about it privately." Eleanor, who had quietly slipped to the side of the stage, watched the scene unfold with racing thoughts. She felt no joy in Dahlia's unraveling, only relief that the truth was finally shining through. Alexander took a trembling breath, addressing the board and the crowd. "I'm sorry, everyone, but we need a moment to address this. Effective immediately, Dahlia West is suspended from her position at Redwood Holdings until these allegations are investigated." The room erupted in shock. Dahlia's mouth hung open, but she quickly tried to regain control. "You have no cause to do that. I've dedicated countless hours." Eleanor stepped forward, voice calm yet firm. "And in those hours you found time to scheme. Dahlia, the Redwood name, stands for integrity, or it used to. I hope you realize that if you've done what Robert claims, this has serious legal repercussions." In a desperate move, Dahlia whirled on Alexander. "You promised me we'd be together. You said you needed me. Don't you understand? If you do this, I'll tell them everything about the—" Her voice cracked. Eyes flicked to Eleanor, pregnant, standing strong. Dahlia's brazen threat dangled in the air. The implication of a sex scandal, or perhaps deeper Redwood secrets, threatened to overshadow the fraud accusations. But Alexander, eyes steeled, declared, "I'm willing to face any consequences. I won't let Redwood Holdings be used as a personal playground for deception." Tears of fury sparkled in Dahlia's eyes. She hurled the microphone aside, its screech resounding in the speakers. Then she marched off the stage, pushing through the crowd. The hush in the ballroom was deafening. Eleanor slipped her hand into Alexander's. For the first time in months, he squeezed it back without hesitation. The party continued, albeit under strained circumstances. Small clusters of guests whispered fervently about Dahlia's abrupt exit. Some, realizing the Redwood power dynamic had shifted, approached Eleanor with renewed respect, acknowledging her as the rightful lady of the house. Under the watchful eye of the Redwood board, Robert Douglas began rummaging through Dahlia's office and personal effects. The further he dug, the more suspicious transactions he unearthed: embezzled funds, unapproved consultancy fees, and hush-money payouts to private detectives who'd apparently been gathering blackmail on Redwood associates. One of those associates was Margaret Sullivan, an editor at Vanity Fair. She had privately confided to Dahlia about Redwood's philanthropic deals in exchange for exclusive interviews. Dahlia had twisted this into more sensational stories, fueling the rumor mill that had battered Eleanor's reputation. With Dahlia out of the picture, Margaret Sullivan broke her silence, confirming Dahlia had manipulated the press. Days later, Redwood Holdings filed an internal investigation, which was soon followed by an official legal complaint. Dahlia West was nowhere to be found. She'd fled the Redwood estate in a flurry, packing her belongings from her corporate apartment. The last images paparazzi snapped were of her stepping into a tinted SUV, eyes hidden behind oversized sunglasses. Meanwhile, Alexander and Eleanor began the slow process of repairing their marriage. He apologized repeatedly, made public statements refuting Dahlia's allegations about her being a co-partner in Redwood Holdings. The Redwood brand took a temporary hit from the scandal, but many saw Alexander's stance as a sign of moral fortitude, a willingness to admit mistakes and make amends. Most importantly, he and Eleanor sought counseling. Alexander vowed he would no longer allow Redwood Holdings to eclipse his personal life, promising to step back from relentless expansion and focus on the family he nearly lost. Each night he would place his hand on Eleanor's belly, marveling at the child they would soon welcome. Yet shadows of Dahlia's presence lingered, the memory of the spectacular birthday party that ended in disgrace, and the knowledge that Dahlia West remained out there, her cunning mind likely plotting a comeback. Robert Douglas recommended vigilance and insisted on increased security for Eleanor. "It's better to be safe," he told her gravely. Eleanor nodded, understanding that while Dahlia might be legally implicated, there were always ways to exploit power. Still, for now, she had her husband's renewed devotion, the Redwood board's support, and her loyal friends around her. And in a quiet moment just before sunrise, one day she whispered to her unborn child, "I promise to protect you from the darkness of this world. I promise to be stronger than I was before." Months later, on a crisp autumn afternoon, Eleanor Redwood gave birth to a healthy baby girl named Aurora Lucille. Redwood, named for the dawn of a new era, and Alexander's formidable mother, Lucille Redwood, who had passed away earlier that year. The Redwood estate, once a stage for Dahlia West's manipulations, now echoed with the coos of a newborn. Alexander cradled Aurora in his arms, tears shining in his eyes as he turned to Eleanor. "Thank you for not giving up on me, on us." Eleanor kissed his cheek, exhaustion and joy mingling in her expression. "We still have a long road, but at least we're walking it together." The Redwood board decided to consolidate marketing under a new team led by Jameson Caldwell and Isabel Harrington, ensuring that no single individual could hold Redwood's operations hostage again. Robert Douglas discreetly continued his legal pursuit of Dahlia West, though she had vanished from the public eye. Where Dahlia ended up remains a mystery. Some whisper that she fled to Europe, living under an assumed identity with whatever fortune she managed to siphon off Redwood Holdings. Others claim she slipped into South America, forging new connections with unscrupulous tycoons, eager to harness her marketing genius. The Redwood scandal lingered in business circles as a cautionary tale. Forbes ran an in-depth article titled, "When Ambition Turns Toxic: Lessons from the Redwood Affair." Eleanor was even invited to speak at a women's empowerment event where she shared her story of resilience and highlighted the importance of safeguarding one's self-worth within high-stakes relationships. And so while the Redwood empire continued to thrive, its foundation was now tempered by hard-earned wisdom. Alexander Redwood might remain the face of Redwood Holdings, but he learned that true success is meaningless if one's moral compass is shattered. Meanwhile, Eleanor Redwood quietly reclaimed her space, no longer a shy librarian from Philadelphia, but a wife and mother who had stared down the cruelty of betrayal and emerged stronger. Eleanor Redwood woke one morning to find herself unusually queasy. In the gilded master bedroom of Redwood Estate, she pressed a hand to her stomach. She'd had these bouts of nausea before, but always brushed them off as stress. Only this time a small voice inside suggested something else. The idea of being pregnant both thrilled and terrified her. Despite her outward composure, she feared that the precarious distance forming between her and Alexander would overshadow the joy of a pregnancy. She tiptoed into the lavish ensuite bathroom, carefully unwrapped a pregnancy test, and waited in trepidation for the result. When she saw the positive reading, she let out a half-choked sob. She glanced at herself in the mirror, softly curling brown hair, gentle hazel eyes, and a face that still bore the traces of the simple librarian she once was. "You're going to be a mother," she told herself. The thought was overwhelming and overshadowed by the creeping dread that Alexander might not embrace this news as she hoped. Over the next few weeks, she sought the perfect moment to tell him. One night, as they dined in the Redwood Estate's formal dining room with his board members, she noticed Dahlia West sitting at Alexander's right hand discussing marketing budgets. Dahlia's presence bristled with confidence. Whenever Eleanor tried to catch Alexander's eye, it seemed Dahlia was there first, occupying his attention with insider jokes or sly smiles. It wasn't until later that night, after all the guests were gone and the staff had cleared away the remnants of an extravagant meal, that Eleanor found the courage to share her news. She stood outside Alexander's study, heart pounding, and overheard Dahlia's throaty laugh from within. "Why is she still here?" The door was slightly ajar, and Eleanor caught a glimpse of them sitting too close, heads bent over a laptop. A pang of jealousy sliced through her. Summoning her resolve, she knocked softly. Dahlia answered, a slight smirk forming on her glossy lips. "Yes," Eleanor squared her shoulders. "I'd like a private word with my husband." Alexander looked up, caught off guard. "Dahlia and I were just wrapping up." Eleanor walked in, trying not to glance at Dahlia, who stood unhurriedly gathering her notes. She offered a sweet-laced with venom smile. "Good night, Mr. Redwood." "Mrs. Redwood," she added, brushing past Eleanor, the scent of her expensive perfume lingering. Once alone, Eleanor approached Alexander. "We need to talk." He leaned back in his leather chair, exhaustion etched on his face. "If this is about Dahlia, I promise she's only here for business. We landed a major deal." "I'm pregnant," she blurted, tears pooling in her eyes. For a second she saw real joy light up his features. He stood enveloping her in a careful hug, murmuring, "That's wonderful news," into her hair. Yet in the back of her mind, Eleanor knew the truth. While his immediate reaction was positive, the presence of Dahlia in that office so late at night meant cracks had already begun forming in their marriage. Dahlia West carried an iPad with Redwood marketing data. She never left the Redwood estate without it, meticulously using spreadsheets and graphs to show how integral she was to the company's success. But the device was more than a professional accessory. It concealed a trove of personal photos, messages, and evidence that Dahlia used to maintain her advantage. She was not someone who believed in love. Life had taught her that men in power were tools to be utilized. "Power first, love," never, her mother's voice echoed in her memory. That motto shaped Dahlia's every choice. When she first joined Redwood Holdings, she saw Alexander Redwood as a potential target. But after discovering the might of Redwood's empire, she elevated him to her primary conquest. At board meetings, she made sure to sit close to him, wearing dresses that flirted with the boundary of professional attire. The Redwood board, a predominantly male group, praised her innovative strategies, never suspecting the cunning behind her charming facade. Her first real break came when she single-handedly saved a failing marketing campaign for Redwood Resorts Bali. She used edgy viral videos and influencer tie-ins, generating the kind of social media buzz Redwood Holdings had never seen. Alexander was impressed by her boldness. Before long, he was asking for her input on other ventures. Late-night brainstorming sessions turned into dinners into long walks, and long walks into stolen kisses in hidden corridors. Dahlia knew exactly how to pace this seduction. Each step was carefully planned. She recorded voice notes of Alexander professing his frustration with board politics. She saved screenshots of private messages in which he admitted to feeling trapped. The more she accumulated, the greater her leverage. When rumor of Eleanor's pregnancy reached her, Dahlia felt a flicker of panic. A child meant deeper ties between Alexander and his wife. She needed a bold strategy to keep her position secure. The forthcoming birthday celebration provided a perfect opportunity to publicly assert her influence over Alexander and Redwood Holdings. So she sat with Redwood Holdings' event team, though few realized she'd effectively supplanted Eleanor's role as the Redwood family hostess. By the time corporate staff realized what was happening, Dahlia had it all in place: top-shelf catering, celebrity DJs, a guest list curated to impress Redwood's biggest investors. The final humiliating detail was overshadowing Eleanor entirely, ensuring the wife's name wasn't mentioned on invitations or official announcements. Dahlia thrived on such audacious moves. For many Redwood employees, Dahlia's meteoric rise was a spectacle. Quiet corners buzzed with speculation. Did Alexander Redwood realize what Dahlia was doing? Why hadn't Eleanor Redwood stepped in more forcefully? Robert Douglas Redwood's head attorney had watched the dynamic shift with mounting concern. He remembered the Redwood empire when Alexander's father was alive: strict morals, unwavering ethics. Now it was swirling around the whim of an ambitious outsider. Robert prided himself on loyalty to the Redwood family, not to those who sought to exploit it. So he began investigating Dahlia's sudden expansions within Redwood's accounts. He discovered incomplete paperwork, suspicious money transfers disguised as consultancy fees, and abnormally high reimbursements for marketing expenses. Redwood Holdings was not a mom-and-pop shop. Huge sums of money could vanish unnoticed. Yet Dahlia's pattern seemed to follow a cunning path, drawing from various corners of Redwood's empire so that no single department noticed large deficits. He quietly compiled his findings. Each new piece of evidence confirmed Dahlia was not merely a passing scandal, but a threat to Redwood's stability. In hushed calls with board members like Harriet Pierce and Leonard Pemberton, Robert mapped out how they could expose Dahlia before she sank her claws deeper. Meanwhile, journalists such as Margaret Sullivan at Vanity Fair and the paparazzi from Page 6 turned the Redwood mansion into prime gossip territory. Eleanor Redwood soon found herself in humiliating tabloid covers painted as the clueless or neglected wife. Some tabloids even questioned the child's paternity, twisting the knife deeper. It was during this tumultuous period that Ava Carter, Eleanor's longtime friend, stepped in as her confidant. Over lunch, Ava confided that she'd overheard Redwood employees discussing Dahlia's infiltration. "You're not alone," Ava reassured Eleanor. "Some powerful people within Redwood see what's happening. Don't lose hope." For Eleanor, that spark of solidarity was like a lifeline. She vowed to stand her ground for her sake and for her unborn child. The official invitation arrived in Eleanor's inbox on a crisp Monday morning. The sender, Dahlia West, Redwood marketing director. Elegant script invited guests to celebrate Alexander Redwood's birthday. No mention of Eleanor anywhere. She read it twice, fury rising. She dialed Alexander immediately, but his assistant informed her he was in back-to-back meetings all day. Voicemails went unanswered. As the days passed, the Redwood estate became a construction zone. Outside vendors swarmed the grounds while Dahlia micromanaged every detail. The estate staff people who had once catered to Eleanor with warmth now avoided her gaze, operating under strict instructions from Dahlia. Even the floral arrangements bore Dahlia's signature black orchids and geometric crystal towers, a bold departure from the Redwood tradition. Eleanor tried to organize a private dinner for family, but the housekeeping manager awkwardly told her Dahlia's team had reserved the kitchen for the entire week. That same day, a formal notice from Redwood Holdings arrived at the estate. Dahlia was listed as the event's sole organizer, with security access tied to her guest list. The implication was clear: Eleanor wasn't welcome. Meanwhile, friends rallied around her. Ava Carter and Isabel Harrington met her in a quiet Philadelphia cafe. "This is your house. Your name is on the trust." "She can't legally keep you out," Isabel insisted. Ava leaned in. "We'll get you in as someone's +1 if we have to." At the same time, Redwood Holdings head attorney Robert Douglas reached out discreetly. He'd noticed Dahlia making questionable moves, suggesting changes to estate deeds, flagging trust funds for reallocation, and subtly pushing for control over Redwood assets. He had no proof yet, but the signs were alarming. Eleanor clutched her belly, overwhelmed, but a new sense of resolve emerged. "This isn't just about me," she said. "This is about protecting our child's future." As the party approached, her allies got to work. Ava secured an official invitation listing Eleanor as her +1. Jameson Caldwell, a respected Redwood investor, disillusioned by Dahlia's overreach, agreed to provide backup. They knew security might push back, but they also knew they had legal and moral ground to stand on. And so Eleanor prepared. She chose a classic emerald gown, understated yet powerful, and gathered her courage. As she looked into the mirror that evening, she whispered, "You're not a victim. You're a Redwood." Outside, the guests began arriving. But Eleanor was ready this time. She wouldn't be left at the gate. The Redwood estate gleamed with opulence the night of Alexander Redwood's birthday. Dahlia West had spared no expense: ice sculptures, gourmet hors d'oeuvres, a red carpet that stretched down the circular driveway. Inside, laughter echoed beneath chandeliers, but outside, Eleanor Redwood stood at the gates, determined to reclaim her place. Security hesitated when she approached. "You're not on the list," one guard said. "I'm his wife," Eleanor stated, holding her head high. "This is my home." Jameson Caldwell stepped forward, holding his invitation. "She's my +1." Ava and Isabel followed suit. After tense glances and a pause thick with indecision, the guards let them through. Inside, partygoers whispered as Eleanor crossed the marble foyer. Dahlia, in a shimmering midnight gown, turned. Their eyes locked. "How quaint of you to show up," Dahlia purred, voice honeyed with venom. Was your invitation lost in the mail? I don't need one to enter my own home, Eleanor replied. The hush thickened. Guests paused, sensing drama. Just then Alexander descended the staircase, smile faltering when he spotted them. Dahlia grabbed his arm, loud enough for everyone to hear. Your wife decided to grace us. Alexander cleared his throat. You came, he said, unsure. You expected me not to. Eleanor's voice didn't waver. Dahlia's fingers dug into Alexander's arm. Let's talk privately, she whispered. Inside the library, tension erupted. Eleanor confronted them both. I'm pregnant with your child, and this woman banned me from my own home. I didn't tell her to. Alexander stammered. But I didn't stop her either. Dahlia chimed in. This is a corporate event. I didn't think she'd fit. Eleanor snapped. You're not his wife. I am, and I won't be erased. As their voices clashed, Alexander finally pulled away from Dahlia. Give us a moment. Dahlia, clearly shocked, stormed out. Alone with Eleanor, Alexander's voice softened. I never wanted this. I got caught up. Eleanor fought tears. If you love me, end it. Choose your family. I'm afraid of what she'll do. She's threatened to expose private Redwood documents. Then let her, Eleanor said. But don't let her destroy us. He nodded. After tonight, I'll handle it. In the ballroom, Dahlia took the stage. Let's raise a glass to Alexander Redwood, she declared triumphant. But before the toast ended, Robert Douglas appeared, flanked by board members. We need Alexander's attention, he announced. Dahlia scowled. Now Robert handed Alexander a folder. Evidence of Dahlia West's financial misconduct. Unauthorized fund reallocations, falsified signatures. Gasps filled the ballroom. Dahlia tried to interject, but Alexander addressed the crowd. Effective immediately, Dahlia West is suspended from Redwood Holdings. No, she barked. You promised me. Her voice cracked. She grabbed another mic, but the DJ cut her off. Security approached. Dahlia looked at Eleanor, then Alexander. You'll regret this, she spat, hurling the microphone and storming out. Alexander turned to Eleanor, extending his hand. She took it, and for the first time in months, they stood united. Word of the shocking confrontation spread through media outlets. Bloggers, news sites, and social media exploded with clips of Dahlia's meltdown. Public opinion ranged from glee at the downfall of a cunning mistress to sympathy for Eleanor Redwood's ordeal. For Redwood Holdings there was damage control, but also a wave of respect for Alexander's stand against corporate malfeasance. Dahlia, meanwhile, vanished from public view. Whispers circulated that she'd fled the country to avoid prosecution. Redwood Holdings' legal team pursued the matter with fervor, freezing questionable accounts and contacting authorities about potential fraud charges. Alexander, freed from Dahlia's manipulative grasp, focused on repairing trust at home. He and Eleanor spent long hours in marriage counseling, confronting the emotional scars of betrayal. It wasn't easy. Eleanor battled moments of intense anger and sadness. But the therapy sessions forced them to communicate without the corporate hustle that had once derailed their marriage. Eleanor found renewed purpose in advocating for women who felt overshadowed or silenced in their relationships. She quietly partnered with philanthropic groups. Redwood Holdings had previously funded raising awareness for mental health empowerment programs and family support. Although she shied from the public spotlight, her name began to carry weight in charitable circles, not as the scorned wife, but as a resilient figure forging her own path. Alexander, too, sought to rectify Redwood's moral compass. He restructured Redwood Holdings, giving more autonomy to a newly formed oversight committee. Robert Douglas became the company's ethics officer, establishing protocols to ensure another Dahlia scenario wouldn't slip through the cracks. On a crisp morning, with the autumn leaves turning gold outside the Redwood estate, Eleanor went into labor. Alexander rushed her to the best hospital in Philadelphia, staying by her side through every contraction. 15 hours later, a healthy baby girl named Aurora Lucille Redwood entered the world. her first cries like a clarion call for renewal. Holding his daughter Alexander was overcome with gratitude and humility. "She's our future," he whispered, tears in his eyes. Eleanor felt a profound sense of completion, even as she acknowledged the road to fully restoring trust with her husband was still ongoing. But Aurora's presence brought hope, a reminder that new beginnings can rise from the ashes of betrayal. Despite the Redwood family's newfound unity, the specter of Dahlia West lingered. Periodic rumors floated about sightings in Ibiza, whispered involvement with foreign magnates. Redwood's legal team kept tabs in case she attempted any vengeance. Yet with each month, Dahlia's threat seemed more distant, eclipsed by Redwood Holdings' fresh era of growth. Eleanor sometimes dreamed of Dahlia, that mocking smile haunting her subconscious. But each time she awoke, she found Alexander by her side or Aurora's soft breathing from the nursery. Gradually the nightmares eased, and there you have it, a high-stakes tale of love, deception, and redemption behind the gilded gates of the Redwood estate. From the moment Dahlia West set out to claim not just a man, but an entire empire, to the final showdown where Eleanor Redwood stood her ground. This story proves that true strength is forged in the fires of adversity. Ultimately, Alexander Redwood had to learn a lesson that money can't buy, honoring the commitments that matter most. If you found yourself caught up in the twists and turns of this real-life drama, don't keep it to yourself. Share this story with friends. Leave a comment and let us know whose side you're on. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button so you never miss another riveting tale. Thanks for watching, and remember, sometimes the most powerful redemption lies in the hands of those we least expect.